Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, a very special guest. He is the Police Commissioner of Suffolk County. Let's all welcome Rodney K. Harrison. And Police Commissioner, we are truly delighted to have you with us on Successful Philanthropy. And I want to start with your background. You had a long career with the NYPD, I believe 30 years, and you held many, many titles with the NYPD. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you did with the NYPD and what it's like now to be Police Commissioner of Suffolk County?
So first, if I could state, Jean, thank you so much for having me on your show. And yeah, I had a very long, I want to say illustrious career with the NYPD, 30 years. I want to feel as though, and saying this, trying to be humble about it, I want to feel as though I accomplished a lot during my career. My last stops in the NYPD, I was the Chief of Patrol, where I oversaw neighborhood policing, which really helped build relationships and became the pillar of police work in New York City. Then in 2020, I became the first Black police commissioner, first Black chief of detectives of the NYPD, which was something that I always strived for, a goal of mine, because I did most of my work in the Detective Bureau, and it was just great working side by side with, if you ask me, the greatest detectives in the world. And my last stop in the NYPD, I was the chief of the department, where I oversaw 35,000 uniformed members of the service, and it was a very, very difficult time. We had to go through a lot of different things. One of them be a global pandemic that really made public safety and law enforcement a very difficult job. And then we also had to deal with a movement of something where people wanted to defund the police, and we had to find ways to continue to keep the morale up of the police officers to go out there to keep the community safe.
Yes, and you've actually made all the history books by being the first Black chief of detectives of the NYPD. And I think that occurred in 2019. And that's something you should be very, very proud of. And then your current position now in Suffolk County, which is very different. You're our police commissioner, and we're thrilled to have you. And how different is working in Suffolk County versus working for the NYPD?
Yeah, when you're going from 35,000 men and women that do such a great work to 2,500, I'm sure you could, that speaks for itself. But I will say this, the one thing that I'm extremely impressed about the men and women of Suffolk County Police Department is their effort in regards to making this a safe county. I'm actually floored by the investigators and how they're able to solve crimes without little leads. I'm amazed by the work by the police officers getting, unfortunately, illegal firearms off the streets. There's a lot of great work that is being done out here in Suffolk County to make sure we protect the residents. But it was a bittersweet move. I love New York City. I love being a cop. I love the NYPD and the work we did, especially building relationships and holding those individuals accountable that committed crime. But once I was given this opportunity and nominated by Steve Ballone and then confirmed by the legislators, I really like what I see out here in Suffolk County, and I'm looking forward to leading this department into the future.
And Police Commissioner, we are very, very happy to have you as a Suffolk County resident. I know that we are all very happy to have you, and we feel very honored. Now, what are the big problems in Suffolk County?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that we're trying to address. I'm sure everyone's aware of the opioid epidemic that's going on out here, where we're having a lot of unfortunate people overdose from this horrible trend of drugs that are unfortunately filtered out here to the county. We are seeing a little bit of a spike in violence when it comes to shooting incidents. that we're getting a better hold of, but it seems to be something that's stemming from gang violence and some of our problematic crews going back and forth, antagonizing one another on social media and causing some of the violence. But the one of the things that I will say that I'm taking a close look at is, how do I protect my officers? I think in order for us to be successful, our police officers have to have the appropriate tools and the training to be successful. So there's a lot of layers that I'm addressing. I have a good team of executives around me. I brought some people in from New York City, from the NYPD, and as well as combined with some veterans out here in Suffolk County, and that team effort, we're going to make sure we get the job done.
I want to speak about the gang activity. About a year ago, I interviewed Sheriff Tulane, and he spoke about some of the gangs here in Suffolk County. And do they pose a real threat to us? He spoke about MS13, the Bloods, and a few other gangs.
Unfortunately, there is a concern. I will say this. My predecessors did a really good job addressing the MS13 gang problems. We really did a nice gang takedown and took a lot of them off the streets. But now we're seeing a rise in Blood gang members going against some of the Crip gang members, and that's turned into a problem. And I want to say with a level of comfort that I got the right investigators in place. I got the right leadership in charge to make sure we investigate these gang members, try to build conspiracy cases against them, and hold them accountable and get them off the streets.
And how do we stop people actually entering into gang activity, youth being recruited by gangs, and what can we do and what can our system do to stop that?
If you ask me, activities. Unfortunately, a lot of these gang members thrive off of trying to do recruitment. The more members they have, the stronger they are. And I think if you're a person that's not involved in some type of activity, you may be drawn to this type of recruitment, this type of gang membership. So I think it's important that we invest into our communities, make sure we have as much recreational activities to keep our young men and women busy and involved in something, and get them a trade, teach them how to build up a skill set, get them to move or prosper and potentially go to college. I think that's the need of how we can help dismantle some of these recruitment of youth into some of these problematic gangs.
Yes, and after school programs, because I think a lot of parents worry about their children, and this is a big fear. And so I think if the system can help, if we have more after school activities available and summer activities, well, it just makes it easier for parents, and it makes it better for young people not to be persuaded by gangs. And another problem that I hear about here in Suffolk County is human trafficking. And just how serious is human trafficking in Suffolk County?
It's a concern. It's a problem. We actually have a dedicated team of investigators to take a look at human trafficking, sex trafficking as a whole. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, once again, going back to some of these gangs and other criminal enterprises that are thriving from getting vulnerable women and using them to commit sexual acts. We've done a lot of good work, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And I'm a big believer of getting out the assistance of the community. If anybody sees something or hears something when it comes to human trafficking and sex trafficking, call our Crime Stoppers hotline. I had so much success when people used to call it in New York City, and helped out my investigators in NYPD. I'm promoting it out here as well, 1-800-220-TIPS. If anybody has any information that can help us in investigating any type of crime, but especially when it comes to human trafficking, sex trafficking, we need to hear about it so we can identify those criminals and hold them accountable.
Very, very important. Again, a big concern to parents of young people. Human trafficking is a big fright and a big scare. And getting back to the opioid crisis, how involved is the Suffolk County Police in trying to stop drug trafficking?
We're the number one leaders in handling it. If it's not for the Suffolk County investigators, it would be a lot worse. And we have a very robust narcotics team. We have some unbelievable investigators that are really getting some good intel and identifying the individuals that are selling these opioids that are being cut with fentanyl that are causing a lot of our overdoses and our overdose deaths. So once again, I'm excited to see the great work that's being done. A lot more work needs to be done, but we have a good team out here, and they're well experienced and they know the landscape, and they're definitely doing a lot of great work addressing those drug dealers and making quick arrests to get them off the streets.
Police Commissioner, we have a problem now in the United States with recruiting police officers. And young men and young women are no longer choosing the police force as a preferred place to perhaps have a career because of the tremendous backlash against the police. What can we do about that? And what are you doing about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in a couple of ways. The first thing is just take a look and you see what's going on in the paper, especially in NYPD. A lot of people are retiring. The second thing is I have two daughters that are New York City police officers. They're rookies. They both work in Queens. And the reason why they became cops is because myself and my wife, who's a retired New York City lieutenant, we kind of told them some of the positives or perks of what it is to be a police officer and giving back. And that's what we have to do in this position. Me being the police commissioner, and as well as a lot of other people, we have to talk about the positives of being a police officer and how you are able to give back and help people that are vulnerable. It's a noble profession, but it's not easy. And unfortunately, social media has made things very, very difficult. Of course, the negative interactions and the bashing of law enforcement goes viral. But when we deliver a baby or rescue somebody, it goes nowhere. And it's very hard to promote such great work when social media likes to paint the picture, negativity of the men and women in blue. So we got to continue to work hard, get out to the schools, get out to the colleges, and talk about coming into the police departments and let it be known this is a great occupation.
Yes, and in New York City, people are very, very concerned. And I don't care about where you live, what neighborhood you're in, but everyone seems to be very worried about crime right now and the safety of New York City. And I think we really need a strong police force in New York City. And of course, we need reforms made. And I think those reforms are being made now. And talk a little bit about that to our audience, please.
Yeah, so a couple of things, and I'll just talk about New York City and NYPD. They have some good leadership there, and Keishon Sewell, I'm a big fan of hers. I think she's the right person for the job, and she's going to make sure that she fixes the issues that unfortunately that are going on in New York City. Regarding what's going on here in Suffolk County, we're putting in reform in place, and a lot of things are coming together. You take a look at our Human Rights Commission and how they're going to oversee IAB cases. We're now implementing body-worn cameras to our officers. We're working on diversity in the police department, and we're going to make this an equitable place when it comes to how we police these communities out here in Suffolk. So, there's a lot of good things coming our way. We still have some work that needs to be done, but we're being a lot more transparent. We're going to be a lot more accountable for officers that don't do it right. But once again, it's this, I'm excited, and we're doing some good things out here in Suffolk County to show that this is a great, great police department.
We are with Rodney K. Harrison. He is the Police Commissioner of Suffolk County. And Police Commissioner, the Hamptons. This show airs in the Hamptons, East Hampton, Southampton. and other communities. And what about crime in the Hamptons? People living here during the summer, we have a huge influx of people coming in. And is crime a big issue in the Hamptons?
No, so crime is not a major concern out of Hamptons, but the one thing I will say that I'm concerned about that we see in the Hamptons is property crimes. I think it's important that as a police department out in Southampton and all the Hamptons, that those precincts are getting out information regarding crime prevention, how to lock up your residence or your business. Make sure you don't leave items in your vehicles. Unfortunately, there's an uptake in cars being stolen, high-end vehicles, not just in Long Island, but also in New York City. So the key thing is we got to get the word out to let people know what the new crime trend is, be aware, and let the public know how to make sure they keep a lot of their items safe and secure.
Yes, years ago in the Hamptons, no one would ever lock their front door, but the world is changing. And so when you go into town and you're parking your car, remember to lock it and lock your door before you leave. A police commissioner, what advice do you give to young people who may want to start a career in law enforcement?
Yeah, I tell them to go for it. I think we need great men and women. I think that's the key word is women to join this organization. Like I said before, there's nothing better than helping people. Nothing better than giving people assistance at their time of need. Giving those people that don't have a voice, allow them to give them that assistance so they can talk and not be bullied or be a victim of a crime. Unfortunately, there are people out there that will take advantage of anybody, be it an elderly to a young child, and being able to enforce law and make sure that no one's being violated as a police officer is a great feeling. But then there's so many other parts of law enforcement that young people can think about joining. Listen, you go into anything from aviation and flying helicopters to being a canine owner and making sure that you work with dogs. We have computer crimes and we have everything from special victims. I mean, the world is yours if you come into law enforcement, and there's so many avenues that you could go into policing to help people out. So I do nothing but we try to recruit young people, tell them, listen, if you're not interested, at least take the test and then eventually make the decision regarding if you think it's for you or not.
And if you had to do it over, would you go into the same, would you take the same line of work?
You know, Gene, that's a very good question. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard my story, but growing up in Queens, I had negative interactions with law enforcement. I never wanted to become a cop. But my father kind of pushed me into that direction. And I joined the Cadet Corps. It was a great experience. I saw the men and women assigned to the precinct where I worked, giving back and talking to the youth and steering them in the right direction and mentoring. And once I saw that, it was very attractive to me, saying, hey, listen, this is something I could do for the rest of my life. And that's my selling point that I now reach out to young men and women myself. This is a great job, and you could take advantage of giving back to your community and helping out.
I think it's very important. And what about your future as you look into, looking at yourself in the next 10 to 20 years? What do you see yourself doing?
Yeah. So listen, I don't know about 10 years from now. We'll find out. But I will say this: I'm a very blessed man. I had 3 daughters. I also now have a grandson. I love being around him. He's 2 years old. So I'm sure while my daughters are out there protecting the streets of Queens, I'm going to have to step my game up at being a grandfather and make sure I help get him to his sporting events and wherever else he needs to be, have some type of assistance with. So listen, I'll do my time out here in Suffolk County. I'm blessed to work with the county executive, Steve Ballone, who's an absolute gentleman, as well as a supporter of law enforcement. And then we'll see what happens in next year and where my journey continues.
Well, you have done so much for so many, and we are truly honored to have you here in Suffolk County as our police commissioner. And we have a few minutes left, and I always like to ask, what advice do you give to anyone, young person growing up? They may not want to go into the police department, but what advice do you give to a young person on career and on future? Because I think people look up to you and they look for advice and guidance.
Yeah. And Jane, you know, one of the things that I take pride in is making sure I reach out to the youth, especially to the youth in our communities of color, and talk about a lot of the positives of coming into this line of work. But I also ask everybody to not paint law enforcement with a broad brush. And that's one of the biggest issues that we have in law enforcement. There could be an incident that happens halfway across the country, and then next thing you know, everybody paints law enforcement with that negative image, and that sometimes is unfair. The men and women that do this job are professional. They're great human beings. They're heroes. Their work ethic is unbelievable. There's no better person than being a person in law enforcement, because the work that they do, helping people that they do not know. And that's one of the messages that I try to get out to a host of different youth. Join law enforcement, be part of the change, make a difference, and try to go out there and help people.
And that's all very good advice. Finally, is there anything else you want to leave us with?
No, well, listen, I just want to reassure the residents of Suffolk County, I'm here to protect you. I'm here to make sure that your safety is paramount. I also want to let it be known that the men and women of this department are working very hard. And unfortunately, there may be one or two officers that may sometimes not do it right, but don't let that paint the whole picture of the other officers in this department that really are putting their best foot forward to protect every single resident of this county. So I'm just really in a great place. I come to work, I read my reports, I see the work that's being done, how we're holding those individuals accountable that commit crimes. I see how we're building relationships with the community. I take a look at the reform plan that we're putting in place to make us a lot more of a transparent and accountable police department. So we're doing it right here in Suffolk, and we're going to continue to do it going into the future.
Police Commissioner, I want to thank you for your time and your service and your family's service to our country. You've really been a wonderful guest and a very informative guest. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. Our guest today, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney K. Harrison. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I'll see you next week.